Well, good morning, good citizens, and welcome to the free world where we learn in peace. It's another episode of Unpublic with Citizen Stewart, and today we are joined by, as we are many weeks, at least once in the week, Citizen Ankrum, Ray Ankrum, charter school leader, myth, legend. I got to give everybody that title, bro. When they come on, how you doing? Good morning.
I'm doing well, man. Thanks for having me again. You know, Unpublic is one of my favorite shows, so thanks for allowing me to grace the stage with promo.
I hope so. With promo this time. All right, promo. We promoted the show, is what Ray is talking about. We actually promoted it today so that people can find us and see us. If you are here and you are listening and you are watching and you come every day like many of you do and have this breakfast time or brunch time with us, please like the show, share the show, give it to a friend, wrap it up in a present, give it to them for their birthday. Do whatever you do to make sure that people understand that we are in this free world trying to make more people be free with our show, The Unpublic. Today, we're going to talk about for us, by us schools. This isn't a new topic. We've talked about it before, but there's a couple of twists. So number one, Ray, I'm setting this up for you because I do want to talk about maybe 5 things or any number of things that we can say is a good reason for us to have schools that are made for us, by us, right? Yep. Some of those things should just be obvious. We know that, right? This isn't like going to be rocket science. But then I also want to ask you a couple of questions on a challenge on the FUBU push. Okay. Also, I don't know how else to put it. Yep. So why don't we just start off with the easy stuff so that we get to the, some of the more challenging part of this conversation. So let's start with, what do you think are some obvious goods or obvious positives about us stopping our reliance on regular district schools and starting to build charter schools that we run, that we lead, that are for us, by us? Just some obvious positives to that.
Yeah, so I don't think that it should just be reclusive to charter schools. I think that any kind of school that can be Black run and Black led should be the focus on what we do in the Black community. And I feel like by doing that, it empowers us. It builds a Black infrastructure in the Black community, right? And then it teaches this level of citizenship that will allow for young Black folks to come back and give back to their community. And so if we're teaching our students like, hey, listen, this is what it means to be a good citizen. This is what it means to come back to your community and to give and to put others on the road to success. I think that not only does it kind of get us past this whole like Black low literacy rate or Black low achievement rate, but it also gets us to the point to where it's like, man, we are starting to empower ourselves and we're starting to like own these narratives in terms of like how Black people can achieve, setting that bar high.
Okay, so one obvious good of running our own schools, for us, by us schools, not just, we are saying charters today, just because I do want to stick with that as one of the points, but just in general, one of the obvious goods is you get to set the bars for yourself. So no more low expectations.
Right.
Because if the expectations are low, at least they're ours. At least we set them.
Yeah, but they still shouldn't be low.
They shouldn't be low, right? But someone else is definitely going to set low expectations for us. So whatever the expectations are for us, we should own them. We should own them ourselves. All right. Anything else? What's another obvious good?
So obvious good is to hire Black teachers, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like this gives us the opportunity to go back to 1954 and kind of reverse the ills of Brown in terms of the Black capital that we lost in the communities. Also, I think that it gives us the opportunity to strengthen the relationship with the Black church that has been lost over the last couple of decades in terms of like, things that can be implemented in the church to support the neighborhood and support the schools. I remember growing up and we've shared these stories on 8 Black Hands. My Sunday school teachers were also my school teachers, right? And there was that interconnection with the community that allowed us to have really good conversations about what good achievement looked like. And school wasn't a 5-day work week. It then became a 6-day work week in which, Saturday was unless Saturday was your Sabbath, Saturday was the day in which you chill, or Sunday was the day in which you chill. But like for 6 days, you were getting good quality instruction.
Yeah. We should do a whole nother show too on what's the actual Sabbath. It's supposed to be an education show, so we might come back to that. You said hire teachers. I think one obvious good is that you control all of the contracting and the hiring. You know, so what you said, I think, is an obvious good, which is we want to create little schools that are little safe harbors for our kids, little places where we can put our children, where they are culturally, spiritually, academically, intellectually safe from much of what the world would poison them with, right? So we can take them out of the poison pool. So, so one part of that is hiring Black teachers that we get to vet.
Yeah.
Another part of that is hiring white teachers who we get to vet too, because let's be real, you're going to have lots of white candidates. If you run your own school, you get to pick which ones make it through the door and which ones don't. Like in a pinch, in a regular school districts, oftentimes you don't have that right. You just get flooded with, here's your 10 teachers or whatever. Another portion of that too, though, that power, that contracting power, is you get to say who gets the catering budget, who gets the food contract, who gets the janitorial contract, who gets the landscaping contract and the painting and all of that. That is a different, you know, listen, people like to talk about community schools.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, what is a community school except for a school that employs those within its community? Many of these community schools that we're talking about, everybody that work in them don't live in the neighborhood where that school is.
The majority of the people that work in them don't live in that school.
I don't understand it. Like, I'm not going to name names, but I know a FUBU school leader who's taken over schools. And one of the first things he does when he takes over a school as a charter school leader, takeover, is he beautifies the schools. Because he wants kids, he wants on their first day, he wants them to walk in and feel like, oh, like that. He wants that. He doesn't just like put you into a basement with dark windows and stuff like that and then say, we're going to concentrate on schooling or whatnot. Everything involved in the beautification of that school has a budget towards it because it needs paint and landscaping and new brushes and all that stuff. And guess who gets those contracts? Guess who does that work? People in the neighborhood where that school is. And I think that's power.
Yeah,
that's
no,
like real power.
Absolutely, absolutely. But there are some people that are doing it right. So I want to shout out Dr. Charlene Reed. She runs charter schools in both Connecticut and in the Bronx, and 60% of her staff are from the community, right? And so like she makes a real intentional. She's very intentional about how she hires, who she brings on, and having that support in the community. And it's hard work, right? Like, because you know people that are from the community, they have some community. There's issues in every community, right? but to bring those people on, train them up to capacity in order for them to be able to do the kind of work that they're doing in her schools, I think that is amazing, and it's a tribute to her leadership. So I say that to say that it can be done if we want to overly commit to the community.
Yeah, I love how you put that so nicely and gently. There's stuff that goes on in the community sometimes. It's not all good.
Yeah,
it's not all golden. All right, so another obvious good to me would be the ability to get out of this ridiculous argument that we're having nationally about whether or not we should teach children the real history, for instance. So I'm going to put this one under the heading of pedagogical control.
Yeah.
Pedagogical control is power, is real power.
So if I got a school, if I'm able to run a network of schools that are for us by us, right? The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to get a critical race theorist in my school or my staff, right? We are going to, because as right now, as it stands, 0% or a very low percent of teachers nationwide are teaching critical race theory in the classroom. It's a boogeyman persona. It's something that my party is doing in order to scare folks into one-sidism or whatever, right? And so I detest that. But what I would do is I would definitely put somebody in that school so that we can then begin to have like real conversations about race. But not from the lens of like the oppressor versus the oppressed, because we don't want to scare people away, but in a way in which we're like bringing folks together to have like really good conversations to move us forward and not move us backward. Forward, not backward. Did I lose you? I'm the only one. So
you would really hire a critical race person?
Absolutely.
So you just lost half your students now.
No, not the black students. remember what the show is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know. You like every time this comes up, I seem to have somebody white tell me like, well, look at these black folks who disagree with you, Chris. These like, they pull up the clip of the mom.
They don't have a true understanding of what critical race theory is.
But they're against it.
You're against everything that you don't know anything about. But then once somebody takes the time to kind of walk you through step by step what this is, what this means for kids, what this means in terms of like how you instruct kids, then it's a totally different conversation.
Right. So I do think that that's a power. Like, I mean, if you say that you would do that, you would be able to control the pedagogy. You would be able to control the teachers. What they're teaching kids. You would be able to control the likeness.
I put it out on Twitter. I put it out, right? Yeah. And I put it out on your show right now. If there is anybody that can prove to me that they are teaching critical race theory in K-12 education, I got a job for you.
Yeah. Well, you know what they've done is they've moved the goalpost on that particular argument. They use critical race theory as the label so that it sounds elite. It sounds elite, aloof, and crazy black. Mm-hmm. So that makes it a good label. But what they do is they explain it and define it as the diversity programs that schools are doing,
right?
The inventories that teachers are taking that are like, am I racist? Am I, or the whiteness deconstructed trainings. So even though we say there's nobody teaching critical race theory, that's actually beside the point because they've defined critical race theory as this wacky, weird, elite, too black scholarly thing that is infecting schools as expressed in terms of like diversity training or whiteness training or privilege walks or stuff that they even really consider wacky, like, woke math and, anyways, we know it's a campaign. We should even give it oxygen. They're doing a great job. It's easy to sell. It's easy to sell stupid things to people when people are stupid. And actually, I mean, we have more of an abundance. Like we have an overcrop. We overproduce stupid people in the United States. So, like, if you are in a battle between an intellectual person and a stupid person, or a person who exploits stupid people, you're going to lose every single time. I think it's something like 70% the United States people who never read another book again once they leave high school. Like the number is that high. Like it's like outstanding, the number. And the number of people who sit in their cars listening to the whole kind of Ben Shapiro, Tucker Carlson, that whole thing all day long, making them dumber, just like taking their brain cells out their heads, giving them language for stupidity. You're going to lose every single time if you try and bring facts to that party. I don't know what we do because I believe in facts, but you just had a president,
you've seen what they've done with facts. Like facts don't exist.
They don't. Alternative facts now, right? Which again, if you run a school for us, by us, you get to pull children out of the states and the other systems of mind control. You get to actually create the environment, create the lesson plans, create the pedagogy, and make sure that it's fact-based.
But there's still standards that you would have to meet in terms of like how you taught those things and benchmarks that you would have to meet in terms of like meeting certain testing requirements in order to get federal aid and be qualified for federal aid. So I think that there's a way to do it. There's a way to streamline it in which it does put a dominant focus on the types of curriculum that we're talking about that empower African-American students or that empower students of color in order to be able to see themselves in the curriculum. Because I think that's the major argument for a lot of people is that, a lot of times when we look and we do curriculum investigations, we don't see ourselves in the curriculum. And so that becomes the major problem. So then if you're able to control that narrative, so now you can see, like, for example, in my daughter's class, if I walk into her class right now and I go to her library or whatever in her teacher's class, there are books that are centered that look like her. She can go and pick a book and say, oh my God, this person looks like me, or or rivals my experience, right? And I think for kids to be able to see themselves in the literature, for kids to be able to see themselves in math problems or whatever, like, you know, that's part of the FUBU process.
No, I think it's so interesting about that is just that, like, representation matters. We know this.
Yeah.
It's not like regular district traditional schools don't try on those things, but it's just so weird. Sometimes the more people try to help us, they hurt us continuously. So, like, even for the good-hearted, good-natured teachers in the systems who aren't culturally connected to the kids, but who are trying, and that you give them something like a project, like, you got to, like, diversify your curriculum and everything. I mean, man, like, sometimes you just want books for your children that show free Black people just being free and just being kids, and they pick like an entire like trauma diet. Like the books they pick is like Black struggle at age 5, Black struggle, you know, like, and you're like, well, damn, you know, did you have to pick every angry book? My 5-year-old wants to, like, my 5-year-old is happy and gregarious and, you know, wants some art in their lives and wants to, like, dream big dreams or whatnot. You got this other book for these other people. It's full of balloons and shit, you know, and, like, you know, higher balloons going up in the sky. You bring our books and it'd be like, she was downtrodden.
But that's when you start writing books, right? That's when you start writing books, and then, you know, when there's a lack or there's a scarcity of certain things, it's like, hey, listen, what can I do in order to kind of boost this, right?
Yeah. I hope more of us do write books then. I mean, because honestly, like, pedagogy and the books that you choose, and even working with the vendors who create kind of like curriculum for school districts, or like textbooks or others, they need to do a better job of finding the people who write the books that aren't just trauma centered or whatnot. You know, kids don't want to like sit around just reading about that stuff. So Damon Warren here says ACE, African centered schools, are very necessary. As a former principal of Harambe Institute of Science and Teaching or Technology, charter school in Philadelphia, I saw amazing work being done. Yes. I saw amazing work being done. I hope that we can someday have ACE, African-centered education schools, that are funded and sustainable privately, like the other private schools around the world. This is an interesting point because charter schooling is like a half step to full freedom. Right. It's kind of like, you know, when people left the South and were migrating to Chicago, like, on the way, they found all kinds of wage arrangements that allowed them to be freer than they were on the South, but it still wasn't as free as they were going to be in Chicago. Right. I kind of like feel like charter schools, in a way, you know, we had, it's interesting, Damon, that you're in Philadelphia and you had so many ACE, you had so many African-centered private schools in places like Philadelphia and these other cities that in the late 70s and early 80s started losing ground. They started losing money. There's all this push around integration. Students were like going out to the suburbs finally. And, you know, there was less of a need for ACE schools or whatnot. So it's interesting that you're in Philadelphia and you ran a charter school, because I think what a lot of people who still wanted to run those schools had to do was charterize. They had to, like,
our guy, our guy, he says all the time, if he could open 1,000 Namde Usasas, he would do it in a heartbeat.
Private ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. He could open a network of private, which, you know, to my ed reform friends, to my friends who, like, you want to put so much money into ed reform, into reforming and whatnot, I'm with you. Put all that money into reform, because actually I'm not going to be like one of the people. I'm not like all y'all. I don't love the district state-run schools. I don't believe government schools are good for us. I never did. So I don't think they're a public good. I don't think they're a public good. I think they're public good for some. Yeah. And I think they're a social control mechanism for everybody else. And they are railroading our asses from kindergarten right into welfare and prison like nobody's business. It works so well.
It works how it's supposed to work.
Works so well, yeah. So, you know, people are like, well, you know, them people that come to disrupt our school systems are bad people. Well, but yes, they are, I guess. I don't know. I'm focusing on the prize, though. It's like somebody like coming to burn down your plantation, and you being like, you know, well, them people coming to get us off this plantation, they're like, yeah, they bad people, all right. keep burning that down until I get out, till I get free. And then we can talk about the merits of who came to set the fire. Yeah. But anyways, you're not going to agree with me then. Not everybody's going to agree with me on that. I get it. I understand.
But putting the onus back on us and putting the power back in our hands. I think that's where it starts. That's where the conversation starts.
That's where I was going with that comment before I got wild and went all over the place, which is basically to say, if you can put hundreds of millions of dollars into reforming a thing, why don't you put that same amount of energy and money into private schools, Black private schools, and let people, like, we have found out how to run low cost private schools in Africa and South America and other places in the world. Like, how do you deliver a low cost private education? Catholic schools had figured that out for a long period of time, like Cristo Rey and others, right? And they have outstanding results with their students. So I think charter becomes the sharecropping exception. For people in reform world, charters are good because they don't have to carry the full weight. Like, the freight is carried partially by the state, like, you know, so you can scale it faster and more. And I think for Black folks that want African-centered schools or for us by us schools, it's good because basically it comes with a per pupil income. You don't have to like sing for your dinner every 5 days.
That's true. But, in some of the most progressive states, you're starting to see charter school caps. And so, if you're capping, the amount of charter schools that folks can have, then the authorizers are going to be really particular about the types of charter schools that they're letting in. And so, when folks start having these lenses in terms of like what's going to work and what's not going to work, they're probably going to side on the ones that you can provide evidence that have worked prior to, and they're not going to try new things like ACE schools, right? And so, those are the kind of conversations that we need to start having with authorizers in terms of like, hey, everything is not going to be cookie cutter, everything's not going to look the same.
That's
but
right.
Work for Black kids.
All right. So we done talked about the upside of you're now opening the door to talk about some of the downside. Because I said we're going to start with some obvious benefits to chartering and charter schools and whatnot, and whatever, we did that. So we did our job. Duly noted. Okay, there's some positives. You can, as a charter leader, you get to control who's teaching your kids, what they're teaching your kids, when they're teaching it, to what standard. You have pedagogical control. I can't think of anything more powerful for a formerly enslaved people than pedagogical control, meaning like we control what our kids learn and how they learn. We don't even have to argue with the rest of the country about it, right? That's power. That's real power. Okay, Black power. But you just open the door to like, what might be some downsides. And let's talk about it. There's lots of people starting charter schools that necessarily aren't the proper use of the pedagogical control for our children. And some of them look like us. What do you do then? Because I haven't called this out very much, but you've called it out before. And I got mad at you. You can call out like somebody started school and you like, listen, I'm going to be looking for your first year results and your second year results. And then you pull their results in year 2, year 3, and you be like, close that. And I'm like, damn, Ray, what is wrong with you? Why did you tell these brothers to close the school so quick? Yeah, but so I give, based off of the conversations that we've had, I'm going to start giving a little bit more leeway because I understand that, when you use test scores as a measure, sometimes that could be a little difficult and that could be a little murky, and it doesn't necessarily measure the total impact, the whole child impact that kids have when they're in schools that are run by Black folks. But in the same token, it's like we have to make sure that we have a high bar for students and we also have a high bar for ourselves, right? So, if we're on white folks that come in and run charter schools that are not getting good results, then we have to be equally as on ourselves for not doing the work as well, because it comes at a higher value, right? Because like we know how important it is to break those generational poverty curses, right? And so, if we're not working hard as hell in order to eradicate generational poverty, and we're just sitting back and eating and getting fat, then that's unacceptable to me. Like I need to know you're doing the work. All right, and I know you're usually tough on that, tougher than I am. But let me ask you just like a direct question, because everything we just said, the reason why I'm asking these questions now is I finally have met my match in terms of, because of CRT and this argument about CRT, I'm starting to see who friends and enemies are more clearly now.
Yeah.
So if you and I have kinfolk, and I shouldn't say kinfolk because that makes you think that there's many of them. I'm talking about one. But if we have a kinfolk, let me say it differently, who's going to start a charter school that is basically going to teach kids that there's no such thing as racism, that there's a success sequence, and you will be successful if you stop talking about race and racism and you just work hard, don't get pregnant, get a job, and that's it. That's everything. And stop all this nonsense about racism, blah, blah. I don't know how that helps us to have kinfolk start schools like that any more than anybody else. What do you think?
I mean, honestly, I think that the kinfolks that we're talking about, when they open these types of schools, they're after a certain demographic, right? And so, no, those types of schools won't work for descendants of the American slave system. No, that won't work. But like for first generation transports in from like the West Indies, then that could possibly work because they haven't experienced racism to the magnitude that we've experienced racism in this country. And so it's a different kind of conversation. And I think that when we talk about those,
bro, what is you saying? I don't even know what you're talking about right now.
So
what you saying? Are you letting kinfolk off the hook for starting schools that are going to teach kids that racism don't exist?
That's not what I'm doing.
Okay, all right.
When folks come from the Caribbean, right, they have a different mindset on what racism looks like, right? And so when you put those folks in the United States, they start getting grants, they start getting opportunities that people that have been here do.
That's right.
Get. And so based off of them getting those opportunities, they start looking at racism differently. Like, hey, does it really exist? Because because I got into Harvard, because I got these opportunities, because my parents told me if I do this, then that, or whatever, right? And so, but they're not looking at it like I'm one person out of 1,000 that didn't get the same opportunity, right? And so even though there's probably 250 people that put the same amount of effort in as I put, I am the only one that made it out, right?
That's
and
right.
Don't look at those things like that. And I think that that's what we need to double down on. And that's the kind of conversation that you have to have with this person that we're talking about.
And this is, and it's not just one person too. I want to be clear about that. I said that. I said that because I'm thinking about one that's a school that's coming with that premise. But I could also talk about a couple that exist right now that are run by either people of color or Black folk. And they are virtually identical to schools that are run by everybody else. They're not like, there's nothing special about it being for us bias in that case. But you just gave, I think, a really sophisticated understanding of this. This one thing is like American descendants of slavery have a different history, mindset, and position within America strata than the Candace Owens of the world. So if you want to own, like Candace's parents came here from somewhere else first gen, it's not a secret why there's so many like her on that side of the camp that are here only 1 or 2 generations removed. And they have that same kind of outlook on Black Americans as everybody else do. So if you want to go and open a sunken place academy, charter school for learning, right? Go ahead and open up your sunken place academy. And, but don't expect us to have a universal acceptance of so-called FUBU, because the us, for us, by us, the us part, you ain't part of the us sometimes, even though you look like you're part of the us. So when you start that Candace Owens Academy for bootstrapping, come on, bro. We have to call you out, or I don't know if we have to. What do you think? Do we have to call you out, or do we just go silent about it and leave it alone?
So I think when you go silent about it, it's dangerous, right? Because the particular person, you're not talking about a particular person. You're talking about a mindset of folks. I'm talking about a particular person. This particular person that we're talking about, he's able to get funding and able to get those opportunities in order to do the things that he needs to do. Whereas you got folks like me and folks like, folks that with the mindset of me that can also do the work, but we're not necessarily getting that funding behind us in order to do that kind of work, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it has to be called out, because if it's not, then it flows under the radar. And then there's this narrative that this person is the only person that can be successful, but we're not talking about all the things that have been put to this person's lap in order for them to be successful.
Mm-hmm. And they're not acknowledging the advantages they may have had, or even the real history. Like, listen, the history of Black America is complex, and we're not all living all pieces of it. Like, there is such thing as Black privilege, and there is such thing as some of us that got some breaks in life. All of the Black elite, from Martin Luther King's day, put their kids in private schools in Georgia and elsewhere, and they went to elite Black private schools. There's whole books called Black Like Us or whatnot. There's always been Black people who haven't had the full range of negative experience of Black history in the United States. But the difference in them is many of them never forgot that they were living in privileged existences, and that not everybody was living the same way that they were living. So they used whatever social standing or power that they had. I mean, listen, I want people to go back and read what Harry Belafonte and Sammy Davis Jr. and Sidney Poitier did to fuel the civil rights movement back in the day. These are elite people who had, high position, Nat King Cole and others who were entertaining white America in many ways. And out the side and out the back, they were funding all kinds of struggle, the movement, and were really fueling it. So I don't give anybody an excuse because you went to Harvard and you came here from another country or whatnot for not understanding. If you're smart enough to go to Harvard and smart enough to get a degree and smart enough to write articles about like all kinds of scholarly things, then you're smart enough to understand why what you're saying is BS for the majority of Black people in the country and how you're living some Black exceptionalism. So I'm going to leave it there on that particular one. I'm looking at the comments because we're at the halfway point. Look at the citizens in this free world who are talking many different things. So Michelle Johnson says, listen, I would send my kids to his school the same way that atheist friends send their kids to quality Catholic schools. My kids would learn what's up at home. Yeah, so and Michelle Johnson is saying, she's making a trade-off. Go ahead.
Yeah, and that's an important piece as well. It's like there's a lot of learning, and you guys talk about this all the time about Dr. Cole talks about this all the time about the learning that happens outside of school, where like your local YMCA or the church or like neighborhood programs or whatever that that you use to kind of supplement what's not being learned at school. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't necessarily put my kid in that person's school. I'd homeschool first. But I could see why some people would make that decision to do that. It would be me.
I mean, I can be very clear with you. If my child was ever going to end up like that person who runs that school with that mentality, it's a no-go for me. I don't know how I could put my kid in that school unless I have no choice. Let's be real. Many people live in environments where there's no choice between this or that.
We don't talk about that.
We don't talk about that.
We don't talk about that, right?
Yeah, it's not like we all live 2 blocks from a Whole Foods.
Right.
Right. Many of us don't. Like the closest Whole Foods to me is 60 miles. A Trader Joe's 60 miles. It's an hour. It takes you an hour. All my shit's melted. If I go to Whole Foods, it's all melted by the time I get home. Yeah. So if that was the only school, I mean, you got to do what you got to do.
The conversation becomes like, why aren't there as many quality schools? Mm-hmm. And then because when I talk about quality schools, I'm not talking about just for Black people. Like I'm talking quality schools for everybody, because white kids aren't achieving at high levels either, right? Yeah. If you're talking about just like scholastic growth. We always highlight what the Black kids aren't doing, but the white kids aren't doing that well either, right? So, if we're talking about school choice, and that seems to be the umbrella or the tent that everybody's able to get under, then we have to have these types of conversations that we're having right now, because not everybody wants to be all encompassing in that tent. Mm-hmm. How can we still have the same thing and get the same access to what we want, which is school choice, but have schools that we want?
Right. That seems like a very hard. We haven't gotten there yet. Mm-hmm. It seems like, school choice right now is just to open the door for there to be way more options, but it still hasn't yet meant that we're going to result in the ones that we want specifically. Mm-hmm. Like I think that's something we have to shoot for. And maybe part of this conversation, for us, by us, African-centered schools, ACEs, low-cost private schools where we control the pedagogical kind of view and the educational philosophy that our kids get. Maybe that's the missing piece that had not been talked enough about in all these years of reform up until now. Mm-hmm. And because of CRT, maybe this is the opportune moment to say, like, listen, I can end the CRT wars in 5 minutes.
Facts. Give us our schools.
Give us our schools. Give me my kids back.
Give us our schools. Give us the funding that you're going to give every other school.
That's right.
And let's meet at the finish line. Let's see who gets there first.
Listen, all the Karens can come up and bitch you out at your school board meetings all they want or whatnot. Give us our money. Give us our per pupil income. Give us our kids back. And give us all the rights in terms of hiring, firing, deciding what gets taught, where, when, and how. And then we can just end this fight. We don't have to have it anymore. So,
or even before you get there, right? So, because it's going to take some time for folks to allow us to open schools and do those types of things. Give us the money allocation that give us the per pupil money allocation, and then let us decide where we want to put our kids in schools. Right? So even if there are narrow choices, right? If we decide that we want to drive across town in order to put our kids in the school across town, allow us and afford us that opportunity to be able to do so. Don't let the zip code determine where our kids go to school, and then you'll see some things.
Yeah, I mean, number one, like, if you could do with that part right there,
yeah.
First of all, people ain't gonna let you do that part. But
well,
if you
why?
could stop,
Why?
Well, because right now, if you wanted to fix public education across the country in one way that seems like common sense, stop enrolling kids on the basis of their address. Like stop, like gerrymandered school districts. School districts are as gerrymandered as political districts, as congressional districts.
100%.
And they're gerrymandered for a very specific purpose. So if you erased all the lines, like if you just erased all the lines, imagine what would happen in the United States if you erased all the lines between these urban cities and their suburban school districts. Mm-hmm. Right? Because you have school districts where the houses are, $1 million, $2 million for not so much house, right, bumping up against a school district that has no air conditioning and rents. So imagine erasing the boundaries and the lines in St. Louis and in places like Oakland and Seattle and other places. I mean, Seattle's a great example. North Seattle and South Seattle, two totally different situations going on. Erase all the lines. Mm-hmm. Just erase all the boundaries and watch what happens. You would die. They'd kill you. They'd find you at the bottom of a lake somewhere. What'd he do? Oh, he tried to erase the lines at school districts.
If we're gonna have a conversation, let's have a conversation, right? Yeah. I mean, and what you're saying is so important, bro, because it just acknowledges the fact that when these folks make these declarations, there's no racism in the United States. All right, so let's prove it.
Yeah, what's equal, like I had someone jump in my feed today who's more on the left side of stuff, and she was like happy that I'm calling people out on the right, around the CRT stuff, because we have some school choice people now who are part of that anti-choice movement. I mean, that anti-CRT movement. And she was eager. She was happy. She's a white woman who runs like a Save Our Schools chapter in Arizona, totally against choice and all that. And she was like, I'm glad we don't agree on a lot of things, but I'm glad you're finally seeing the light on this, that they're like, steeped in racism. I was like, oh, no. You white women that run these SOS Save Our Schools chapters all across the country or whatnot, who block people of color from getting into schools we want to get in, you the white face of supremacy too. You the same. Don't get it twisted. White supremacy has a left wing and a right wing. That's how the bird flies constantly. The more the left wing and the white wing, the right wing of white supremacy flap themselves, the more that bird keeps flying. Right. Yes, so one will be telling you, look at the other wing. Look at the other wing. And you're like, no, I'm trying to look at the bird. I'm trying to look at the bird. I'm trying to look at the whole bird. Why you got me trying to look at a wing? Oh, the right wing. They trying to kill y'all. And you ain't? You not? Really? I couldn't tell. Oh, no, we love you on this side, on this wing. Yeah. One side loves a Candace Owens and the other side loves a Cory Booker or whatever and blah, blah, blah. And we got to dance for our dinner on both sides. So anyways, I know that's
don't off come for Cory, man. We can't come for Cory. He's a friend of the show.
Well, listen, everybody's a friend until they're not right now. I mean, I don't want to go off on a tangent, but right now Democrats can't defend us from crazy attacks on our rights to vote. They can't defend us for crazy attacks on our rights to be taught real history. They can't defend us on things like even passing out water for people standing in 4-hour lines to vote. I mean, come on, how weak are you if you can't get across? They got to argue with themselves about that. Republicans, perfect discipline. None of us are going to vote for this. None of us are going to vote for this. Democrats, well, can we get Manchin to man, you know what? Manchin needs to go ahead and switch parties and get on out there. Y'all need to just cut him loose.
And even when there's an opportunity for dissension in the Republican Party, guy gets on the phone and is like, hey, I need a personal favor.
Right. Stop it. 2 wings, 1 bird. We need a FUBU. We need a different bird.
For you Bayou bird.
Yeah, that's right. We need a different bird.
Yeah.
So Najima said that, I thought this was a good comment. She said, we need to start doing private schools instead of just seeking to open a charter school, especially in Pennsylvania. It's much harder to open a charter school or a charter than a private school. And in most states, they have some type of school choice program that will pay for our children to attend private schools, which is true. If you go to EdChoice's website, you will see on EdChoice's website, state by state, what they offer in terms of different types of programs, school choice programs. What I've noticed is a lot of those programs aren't what I thought they were before I saw the data, because a lot of them are aimed at students with disabilities, particular disability. And I didn't know that there were so many folks getting access to like private deaf schools and other schools that I didn't know about. A lot of them are aimed at low income. In Ohio, some of those programs are aimed at kids who are in a zip code that continuously underperforms. So Najima might be on to something. What I was saying earlier that I don't think I made the point well enough is that school reform folks who put so much money into charters and into reforming districts and all that might need to actually stop neglecting the idea of putting a lot more money into private schools and private schooling, and specifically community-based private schools, community-based private schools that are run by people who have an indigenous calling to run those schools. I don't know what you think about that, Mr. Charterman.
Sir, I agree with you 100%. I think that if I had the opportunity to run well-funded private institutions for Black kids, I would jump on it in a heartbeat, right? But it comes down to, it comes down to tuition, it comes down to the ability to pay the tuition, or if there's going to be subsidies, if those subsidies are going to be consistent, or if those subsidies are going to come in like 4-year spans, with politicians playing games with money to help fund kids. Then it also comes down to your ability to raise money, to raise capital. So like these capital campaigns become extremely important, because then that's how you pretty much fund the program. So like the majority of the money but then if you're able to do capital campaigns in order to have robotics programs and for programming, if you're able to like get grant opportunities for the programming piece, then I think that it could be successful.
What do you think about all the celebrities? Not all the, but what do you think about like all the celebrities starting schools things?
So I want to shout out Jalen Rose, because Jalen Rose is actually in Detroit doing the work, right? And so I like the mindset, and he's very forthright about what kids need and what he can do, right? So like he's like, yo, I'm not a rich guy, I'm not LeBron, right? And so I have to have fundraising in order to be able to get the kids what we need to get them, right? And then look at their results. They're sending 100% of kids to college, so he's doing the work. I think that I want to see more celebrities like give back to the communities and stuff, but like I don't want to see it as being a tax write-off. I want them to be really invested. Yeah.
And Jalen is, I mean, by all accounts, I'll tell a short story. I had an Uber driver in Detroit who actually just got to talking to her like I do everybody, in Uber. And she had went to this school that I really had heard great things about. and I couldn't remember. Just talked to Bernita Bradley from Detroit a couple of days ago and asked her, and she reminded me what school it was. The school was for pregnant moms, and it was on a farm.
You're talking about
and it was like they started a business. They got out of the city and got onto this farm where there was a school, and they started like a goat milk, goat cheese business, and the kids just blossomed because it was out of the like kind of the city situation, and it was more in a natural kind of situation. And they provided extra strong early learning and daycare for the kids of the pregnant moms. So my driver, the Uber driver, told me she was finishing her master's degree right now at the same time as her daughter was, who was born with her while she was attending that school as a pregnant mom. And I was like thinking, damn, they did a 2-generation strategy, and both of y'all about to get these jobs. And she was like moonlighting, but she was like, she was teaching in different schools, and she was like, charters came up, and it was Detroit. So I was expecting like, and she was just like, yeah, them charters, like a lot of them, you know, they're just like cycling kids through like the district. The district is jacked up. A lot of the charters are jacked up. They take the money and they run. They're not run from our community, blah, 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 whatnot. And then she said, you know, I worked at Jalen's school for a while. Now that's different. He really does care about them kids. Like he loves them kids and blah, blah, blah. And she started glowing about all the stuff that happened there. That's the FUBU difference right there, I think. Right. Her testimony to me that morning was, and she was a long-term resident, indigenous to Detroit. And the outcome of her seeing how the different schools worked was she knew the difference between a FUBU charter school and all those others. So,
yeah. Hey, so you got Auntie Elaine in the comments, right? And
what's she saying?
Auntie E, I know you're on the board of Boys Latin. I've been waiting to get a sweatshirt to wear on the hand. Still,
well, I better get one too now.
Right? Still nothing. I got nothing still. What's up, Auntie?
You know who sent me? So I got Urban Prep.
Okay.
From Tim King, and it took me a year of badgering him to get it after a year. So I think I should get some from David Hardy.
Yes, sir.
David Hardy needs to send me some stuff, and I don't think El Mekki ever sent me anything. I need to get on all these folks.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's put a call out. Let's tell everybody. Well, listen, you run a charter network too.
I got you. I got some stuff right here.
What's up with my swag? Listen, don't come on my show like harassing the citizens of a free world about your swag when you ain't even sending any out. I'm listening. I'm looking at the comments here, and I'm thinking that it's really interesting that the majority of people in our like circles don't have a problem with any of this. Like we should run our own schools. We should control the pedagogy. Our kids need something more. They need something different. But we're kind of in a bias sample, right? Like we are a bias sample when we think about that. Many of our people are not with us on this. And not by our people, I don't mean like people with kids who are searching for schools, because that's a different group of people. That's what we call the Black masses. But when we talk about a smaller group, the Black asses, there are people who like will come at us for even suggesting that we should talk about something other than our kids being in regular district schools. You know, it's the cornerstone of democracy, Ray.
I don't.
Why are you trying to end democracy, Ray? Why are you trying to destroy public aid?
I got no energy for that, bro. So here's the thing, right? The majority of the people that we have these conversations with that talk about, oh, you should just put your kid in a neighborhood school. Why the hell am I experimenting with my kid? Would you experiment with your kid? Are you experimenting with
Are you doing it now? Yeah.
Right. Are you doing it now? Are your kids in the schools that you're telling us to put our kids in? The answer, more than likely, is going to be no. And if the answer is no, then there's no way that you can expect for me to do anything like that. I will not.
What do you think can be done to convince them to maybe, obviously, let's just be as kind as we possibly can to that group of people. Right.
Yeah.
Obviously, they believe that they're for Black people and that they believe that there's a reason to have like a strong, centralized public education system. They really believe in it.
But why? Why though, Chris? Why? Let's talk about why. Right. So when let's break down these numbers. Right. So about 7 to 9% overall of Black folks make up the teaching population nationwide. 1.7% of those are black men, right? And so by us putting our kids in these traditional public schools that do not work for us, how is that benefiting black folks? It's not. Who is it benefiting?
Well, I mean, like, think about it. Like, you know, Jason Allen is on here too. Shout out to Jason. He was on the show yesterday. He's running for school board in Atlanta. He's gonna have to face some of these questions, you know. He's really gonna have to, you know, face some of these questions. But I mean, in a city like Atlanta, you could make an argument that the public centralized schools are for us, by us. I mean, they're run by black people, top to bottom.
I got some friends in that district.
Yeah. So you can't say anything or what?
So I'm limited in what I can say, but what I can say is the friends that are like newly initiated into the Atlanta Public Schools school district. They're looking to make drastic changes within the district. And so I got to sit back and give them some time in order to be able to operate and do the things that they need to do.
Yeah.
And then we'll see from there. But I think that what Jason is doing, first of all, is heroic, right? At the fact that he's stepping up to the plate and he's running for school board. He's not just talking about it, but he's actually being about it, right? And that's the challenge that we've had for like most folks. So Jay, we got to get you on. We got to get you on 8 Black Hands, man. We already committed several months ago to where if we got black folks that are gonna be running for school board, you coming on the show, we're gonna get you as much publicity as we possibly can in order to highlight what you're doing in your area. So shout out to that, brother.
Well, let me. I know we're gonna run on time here soon, so let me come back to this point again. Just like, could you literally say though, and this is just like, you know, for a thought exercise.
Yeah.
If your school district has a black superintendent and a black school board, and the majority of the population is black, and probably the majority of your teachers are black or close to black or something black, unlike any other cities where, I mean, like the majority of teachers in New Orleans, for instance, are black. People don't know that, but I think it's like 54% or something like that, which is, you know, people will say, well, it used to be 70%. Well, you know, some of the teachers live in a place called Houston now and everywhere else too, all across the country. They never went back because they went to other places and it was less oppressive and they had more opportunity. But 54% is still, like you just said, nationally, it's like what, 7% nationally or something like that?
7 and 9, yeah.
So if you have a city where, you know, it's majority black already run, could you make the argument that this is a FUBU education system? We don't really need anybody else here.
No.
Wait a second. I just told you the superintendent is black, the school board is black, in a lot of cases the mayor is black, the police chief is black. You know, there are no white folks in the game in a place like some of these cities.
Yeah.
Why is that not FUBU?
So I think, I guess the best, in all likelihood, where I see success and like pockets of success, I would say is Baltimore City. And so there's some really good things happening in Baltimore City.
Santa Elias.
Santa Elias. Yeah. It could be better, but there's some really good things there. And when Kaya was in DC was rocking and rolling. A lot of times when you have these superintendents that are in these spaces or whatever, you don't see the results then. But then when they leave, 2 years later, you see these numbers are like out of the park, right? But that's attributed to the work that they did when they were there, right? So they don't necessarily get their roses while they're in the superintendent seat, but it's based off of hard work and initiatives that they put in. So, I mean, there are these instances in which you can see where the growth is on an upward trajectory. I would say Cammie, who's not black, but worked in a majority black school district in Newark. When she left, you can see that upward trajectory, even though she didn't get her flowers and probably never will based off of where she worked. So I can see the seeds of these all black districts, these Wakanda school districts or whatever. I can see the seeds.
Yeah. Well, obviously our bias sample in the free world community here, the unpublic community, the family for brunch, the brunch family here is not feeling that question. And Jima said, Chris, don't even finish that question.
Yeah.
The answer is no. Don't even finish that question.
No. Oh, Indy is on the rise, right? Like nap time, like
Indy.
There's some folks in Nap that are doing some amazing things. Shout out to David McGuire in Tinley Academy.
I know David and Tinley, but you mean the school district is on the rise? The district itself? Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay,
folks outside of
so folks in the family who are having brunch this morning, they're like, yeah, no, that question. Michelle Johnson says, hell, I just had a black man on Twitter who is in the Georgia school system tell me that the school is not responsible for teaching reading. So sometimes your own people, and Jason was on yesterday. I talked about the cheating scandal in Atlanta only because it was something I did a deep dive on
like 10 years ago, right?
Yeah, but I like researched it, and they did research 5 years later to find out what had happened to the kids. Had there been any? And then they did another research project after that. They followed the kids, right? Mm-hmm. So we can't keep talking about number one, we can't keep talking about these things like they're not common. Like our kids are being cheated. It's just not, it doesn't always make the news in a way in which people are going to go do research studies and say, well, what happened to the kids?
Yeah, but there was money. So the problem with that though, Chris, is that there was money associated with those test scores, right? And so anytime you have money that are associated with test scores in that manner.
I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. That
kind of school district.
I believe that there are people in the world who will cheat no matter what happens. So it's almost listen, bro. Like the person who comes home and has cheated on his wife, and she says, "Why would you do that?" and wants to divorce him, and he says, "I was drunk." I was drunk. Like I was on some other stuff right now.
What are we doing right now?
If that's in you, all the Hennessy did was bring out in you what was already in you.
That's a fact.
Incentives, like performance incentives, don't turn you into a crook. Being a crook turns you into a crook. So I don't buy the argument around like, oh yeah, the performance incentives made me cheat. I wouldn't normally cheat in any other way, but since you put money involved, no, stop it. Stop it.
I mean, think about it, right? Like, Bill Jefferson would still be a congressman if he didn't.
If he didn't have the cold cash,
money right?
in the freezer, no, being a crook makes you a crook. And listen, I don't want to relitigate that story. I know there's going to be a movie about it. Actually, there's supposed to be a movie. Yeah, there's supposed to be a movie coming out about that whole scandal.
Who's doing it? Who's producing it?
I don't know. Actually been hearing about it for like a year now, though, and people have been telling me to brace for it. But I don't bring up that story because I want to hammer that story home. It's only because I happen to have studied it and fall down the rabbit hole and then watched the court proceedings, and I was shocked by the things I was hearing people say about the kids of Atlanta in those court proceedings. Or I was just shocked by the educators in that case. So, anyways, I guess the answer to if a school district is Black led from top to bottom doesn't necessarily mean it's for us, by us. I will say this much. I do believe that those type of superintendents, for instance, like creating partnerships with new kinds of schools, can do it in their districts more than someone else, maybe in another district. So they should be. Like, if I was in the same state as the Piney Wood School, I would be wondering like what kind of relationship we could have. If I was, if I had high performing charter schools or Black private schools in my state and I was a Black superintendent with a Black school district, I'd be thinking about ways in which I could be creative and not just to do whatever the teachers union tell me to do.
Why don't the A Black Hands have a private school?
Woo!
Why aren't we creating a network of schools?
Bro, listen, if I had a school, this is all it would turn out. Just like one after the other.
Hey, listen, if we pumping out good product like that, listen, there's nothing wrong with that.
Problem children, like a system this bad deserves problem children. I think that's what we should be training up and turning out. All right, bro. Well, listen, this has been another, I think, kind of like great morning discussion. I enjoy the family here for brunch. Elaine Wells says, "Why aren't you Why aren't y'all starting
Hey,
school?
tune in Sunday. We're gonna talk about it.
You think so?
Yeah, I know we're gonna talk about it Sunday.
All right, so we got a vote of confidence from some of the fam, but fam is always like, you can do anything, go do it, bro. Y'all do it, because your family love you. They think you can do anything.
With the components in place, we got you and your advocacy. We got coal and energy converters. We got Reef coaching teachers, coaching leaders. We got me. Listen, we got
schools running a network.
Yeah.
It certainly wouldn't be the Sunken Place Academy.
Oh no.
It'd be the unsunken academy.
It'll strengthen our argument in terms of like what we can do.
That's true. That's true. And actually, you know what? Let's end there on what can we do, because people listening to this conversation, there's always lots of problems we could talk about. There's always lots of complications. I get it. There's like stuff in the world that is not going well for us or whatnot. It is nice to always end up in a place where you say, what can you do? I don't know that I'm going to give you my quick answer on this, Ray. I'd be interested in anything you want to leave people with, but I don't know that there's an easy wrap up answer to everything in the world. So we do have to talk about complicated problems as if they're complicated sometimes, and just get in the mess and be messy about it. Because none of this to me is all resolved. However, there are simple things you could always do, right? And I believe at every level, like the simplest thing you can do right now is what I talked about yesterday. People like Jason Allen and others who step up to lead, support them. People who are like you, Ray, who run schools or whatnot, make it a part of your life that you're going to support people like this in any small way that you possibly can. You're going to spread around small love, little pieces of small love. You're going to support Ray. You're going to support Jason Allen. You're going to find those ACE, the ACE schools that are providing a Black centric education to kids, and offer them like $50 a month or a year or a day or a week, whatever you can, to help any student that's going to those or whatnot. You can give $5 a month to anybody. You can make the smallest contribution to something. And if there's enough of you, that contribution isn't just like a pebble in the lake. So stop making it all or nothing. Either I'm going to do the big thing, which is I'm going to open up a whole chain of schools and I'm going to educate 8 million kids tomorrow.
Yeah.
Or you could do a small thing, which is I'm going to make sure that a college young person going to college who's going to start this fall is going to get a care package on the first day that they arrive, and they're like sitting there trying to figure out their dorm room that night or whatever. Or I'm going to find somebody through my friends, family, church system of somebody who needs something like a Chromebook or whatever it is. Do something small, but make it part of your portfolio of activism, the things that you're going to do. How about you, Ray?
Bro, so
final words.
Real easy. I'm stealing from you. I'm borrowing from you, right? So if you are a parent this summer and you have access, right? Think about a student or a kid in your community that does not have access, and when you're going on a trip, if you got extra seating in your vehicle, please put that kid in a seat, strap them up, and bring them with you, and give them opportunities to kind of embark on things that they wouldn't necessarily be able to embark upon. That's what I got.
I think that's great, man. I mean, we have talked about this before. I think we talked about on 8 Black Hands. I got a minivan. If you have an extra seat to something in your minivan, I don't live in a community where there's like kids beating down the door, or it's always obvious who needs what, where, and when, and we're kind of more spread out. But I do think in all the ways that you can find to be helpful. And I find these ways myself on a pretty regular basis. I used to be an all or nothing person. Like if I can't solve your whole problem, I'm useless or whatever. I started to find out like even providing whatever you can is helpful. So, All right, family. Well, listen, this has been another great brunch. Sorry that we ran out of mimosas today, but I hope you enjoyed the chicken and waffles, the vegan chicken and waffles, plant-based, brought to you by not Tyson. Today was brought to you by the letter C, the letter R, and the letter T, and the number 8 million, which is the number of Black children walking into public schools that are not ready to help them reach their highest potential every school day of every school year. Thank you all so much for coming, for enjoying this time with us. Tomorrow I will be back again and we can resume. This has been another episode of Unpublic. Welcome to the free world. You are still not free, but we are getting there. We're getting there together. Thank you, good people, good citizens. We'll see y'all again tomorrow. Appreciate you all. Ray, thank you for coming on